Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to discuss working an application room on TryHackMe, and in this room, basically we're manually going to review our application for security issues using only our browser built-in developer tools and basically hacking with just browser no tools or scripts. So let's start with the introduction on task one. So, in this room, you will learn how to manually review a web application for security issues using only the built-in tools in your browser. More often than not, automatic security tools and scripts will miss many potential vulnerabilities and useful information. So it's quite possible that whenever you are automating tasks via a CLI, then it's possible several key points on a web application might be missed by that particular tool. So it's always best to manually review the application through different kind of methods by viewing the page source and other things that you can review up without automation. So there are a few things that you can manually review. One is the view source that you could view up the entire source using the built-in developer tools or just right-clicking on the website and there will be pretty much an option to view the page source. And there is an inspector in a browser. So in the developer tools, if you basically uh, click on the particular element and there's an option when you right click on the mouse and there's an option to inspect an element and it basically shows what the element is consisted of and what's the code behind that. So it's often useful in most of the cases, and there's also a debugger here, and I would show that in this room. And there's a network tab which basically captures all the network traffic and it basically manages sessions and it has some session cookies and all the network traffic that the page is requesting from source is going through this network tab. All the requests, all the JavaScript, all the CSS being rendered is being done by that network tab. The incoming requests, the outgoing requests are basically in this network. See, all the network requests a page makes. So every request the page is making, whether to get the JavaScript, whether to get the CSS to load the page, it's all it all can see manually via this network tab, and there's a debugger as well. So it inspects and controls the flow of a page JavaScript. So JavaScript basically is the functionality that makes functionality on a website that makes possible to for a website to function properly, and it basically inspects and controls the flow of a page, how are things being rendered, and what JavaScript is loading up. So debugger basically helps in fetching that. And that's pretty much for the task one. And let's go for task two. So let's try exploring a website. So there is a website that has been given to us, and we are gonna visit that. Yeah, so it's named as ACME IT Support, an IT support company that is being shown as a demo example. So they are different. So as a penetration tester, your role when reviewing a website or web application is to discuss the features that could potentially be vulnerable. So if we are, let's gonna be say, if we are looking for bugs on this website, or we are looking for, and we are hired as a penetration tester to find out the vulnerabilities in this entire company, then it's our responsibility to find the vulnerabilities that are not yet disclosed or yet not being discovered by the other security team. So we should be able to find vulnerable spots, and it ain't gonna be clear most of the time, but you would have to manually review page source and other paths and other directories in order to find what is vulnerable to that particular company. And starting off, we can start with what are the pages that we have. One is the home page. So this is basically the home page of this website, and typically when you are going to visit a particular website, you would come across firstly a home page. This page contains a summary of what the company has to offer and what are the details about the company, etc. etc. And there are different things that could be available as it's an IT support company, so it's quite possible there might be a news tab. And this part basically is for the news that has been disclosed for that particular company, and it contains a recently published news articles by the company, and each news articles has a link with an ID number. And let's say if this is the first article, then it's given the ID 1 in the path article directory. So this is basically a subdirectory article on that particular directory of news. So if we change the ID from 1 to 2, then we will get the other article. And there is a contact page for this IT company, and you could fill out this form to for some inquiry or some other purposes. And there can be a customers page, and this is basically for the customers to log in up, and there's a customer sign up page for as well if you ain't registered first time. If you want to reset the password, there's another page, and if you want to create a ticket for some inquiry or some other purposes, then you could create a ticket as well. And there is a customer account for some customers, and there is a customer logout option as well. So there are different types of pages that are available, and each page is stored in a directory that is often in the slash the directory name, and often that question mark, the name after the question mark is the parameter. So if I wanna show that article example again, slash news slash article. So that ID is the parameter being passed on the first directory news and subdirectory article, and this is the page that we get access. So now moving on to the task number 3. So basically page source. So the page source is the human readable code returned to our browser from the web server each time we make a request. So what the backend is happening when you are visiting this website, and our web browser is basically the client, and the server on which this website is being hosted up is the server that should respond to our request. And so we made a request to the server, and server gave us the response in the form of this website. And this website is hosted on server, and that website should contain some code in order to make this responsive, and to every functionality on this website is basically due to some coding on front end as well as back end to ensure everything is working correctly. Now there are a few options to get this page source, and we all know that a website is made up of three essential components. One is HTML, which is basically the backbone or the skeleton of the entire website. So this entire text, this entire image, and this entire different types of media text and images portion, which is basic. The structure is due to hypertext markup language, all due to tags in different formats. And then we got CSS, which is used for styling up this entire website, and it is used for making it look more cooler and look more attractive. While the JavaScript is used to make the functionality on the front end as well as the back end, and used for ensuring that the customer is getting the results they do need up. So let's see if what if we access the news tab, then it's the JavaScript responsibility to render up this home tab or this new tab whenever the user clicks up, and it's all going a request to the server from this JavaScript, and the server gives us the response in the form of the news tab being opened up. And now, how can we view the page source? So the page source might contain up the HTML on this page, the CSS of this page, and the JavaScript of this page as well. So, and there are a couple of options we can use in order to view the page source. So the first option can be to just, there's an option to view page source when you right click, and it basically says to view the page source. The other option that we could use up is this view source column and the website that we want to access, just manually type on, or more often the web browsers also have the option to view the page source, often via submenus or more tools. And now there is a specific section that is dedicated to developers, and we also can get the source of that particular element via that, and it's called developer tools. So if we ctr shift plus I, then we get access to the developer tools. So we're going to discuss each and every, but let's start with what is the main source. So what is the entire page source? And yeah, this is the entire page source. So next up, we are going to discuss what are this entire piece of crap. So this first line, this is used to indicate the comment in HTML, and as you know that HTML is basically the backbone of the entire website, so it is quite essential to make comments on the website, and for the developers it is made easy for future development to add some comments. For if we got some other developers working on our project as well, then adding up comments made it easy for some other developer or some other programmer to understand our code correctly, and it is often required by developers as well to push comments when we got the website hosting up as well. And this is basically the comment that has been left out by the developer, and this we all know is the basic structure to make an HTML page. And there's a header title after the website and couple of other links to CSS file and different JavaScript files as well. And then we got the body. So there's a nav bar over there, and the nav bar, what basically is doing is rendering up this entire different sections on the website. And after the navbar, we got to for some the comment out there is navbar nav collapse, and then we got the different tags, paragraph tag, the img tag, and the divs inside that for rendering up this page. And at last we got something over there which is, I guess, page is generated in 0. This second couple of might be some JavaScript to calculate this functionality about how much time is being required to render the page, and this comment is left out by the developer. And what is basically is quite an indication for the developer that is going to come up on the development phase for its better understanding that this website is being made on this framework. And if you do want to continue up, then you should acquire this framework. And what are basically the frameworks? It are basically what is powering up that entire website. I guess we would discuss up in the next section, but what framework is basically, it could be anything, is a collection of pre-made code that easily allows a developer to include common features that a website would require, such as blogs, user management, form, form processing, and much more, saving the developer hours or days of development. And basically, if that is some function over a particular website and it could require some more time, then there's a framework dedicated for that purpose, and it makes the life of a developer easier. And often we don't write code from scratch, and we just take out a framework for that purpose and just push that framework for our purpose, and our desired request is being fulfilled. Now, there is another thing that should be discussed up is the frameworks and the versions are quite vulnerable if are not kept up to date. So let's say if we are able to find out the version of that framework that is being hosted up for the website. So here we can see clearly that this website is made up of on TryHackMe framework as an example. It ain't, or it might be a real framework, but TryHackMe Network version 1.2, and it basically is a framework that is being used, and it is quite possible that it is outdated and kept updated. So there might be some common exploits and there might be some vulnerabilities that has been published on this framework previously, and some other malicious attacker could have exploited that earlier on. And we know the version, we know the framework, and it is quite possible to exploit the website if it ain't updated and ain't using an updated version of a framework. So as a penetration tester or even a bug bounty hunter or a red team or ethical hacker, it's our responsibility to review up the base loads for some frameworks indications or some version indications and finding out if it is really vulnerable or not. So now coming up to the questions, what is the flag from HTML comment? So we can clearly see there are different types of comments over here. One is the page source, and the first comment, this page is temporary while we work on the new home page. So there is our directory over there, and if we just access that directory, oh sorry, we just access this directory, so then we would get the contents for our first flag. And yeah, what is the flag from secret link? So it's asking what is the flag from the secret link, so it might be somewhere in the source code as well. So our dedicated staff are ready and assist with your IT problems. So there is an anchor tag over here, and it is basically giving us a secret page over here. And when we visit this secret page, then we would get the flag, and it ain't often more common in real world scenarios that you would find something a page that would reveal something really sensitive. But for the practice purposes, it is quite essential to make sure that nothing sensitive is being published up online. And then is what is the directory listing flag. Now, what this might be there is to look for some directory listing flag. I might guess up is this first. Oh, so basically what you might be seeing up here is assets slash site dot JavaScript. And what is basically is manually some web servers do need some assets in order to load up some pages, and it generally does contain a lot of sensitive details. And if you would see here, assets is the all the JavaScript and CSS files are being hosted up on this server for the client to for the web server to render it easily. But it often does include some sensitive data, as more often in the cases when the web server ain't a dedicated one, then it is quite possible that the web server might be hosting up some other files too, and that files might be sensitive up as well. So it is quite possible to get some sensitive data right here. And if we could just copy up this tag, but it ain't more often common in such scenarios that you would really find some sensitive data in the assets folder, but it's better to look for everything that is there for the public user. And then we got the framework flag. So what I might guess is where the framework flag would be is that framework where that website was the website was using a TryHackMe version framework, and the developer left a comment for us, more often indicating the documents and logs of that framework. And you might notice is there as a home, there is a change log functionality, and there's a documentation functionality as well. So if you go on over here, there's a version 1.3. We have had an issue where our backup process was creating a file in the web directory called temporary .zip, which potentially could have been read by website visitors. This file is now stored and is in an area that is unreachable by the public. So it might not be unreachable by the public, but it's quite possible that it is still being hosted up on the website. So we might be able to download that zip, and yeah, we were able to download the zip, and the zip contains the flag. And TryHackMe always keep your software updated, and you should always keep the software updated. And if the website is using an outdated software, then they are quite vulnerable for such attackers. Next up, we got some developer tools. So every modern web browser includes developer tools. So every web browser would include some of the developer tools. As I previously mentioned, you could get access to developer tools via CTRL Shift plus I. CTRL Shift and I, and these are the developer tools. This is a toolkit used to aid web developers in debugging web applications and give you a peek under the hood of a website to see what is going on. As a pen tester, we can leverage these tools to provide us with a much better understanding of a web application. So now, after opening up the web application web developer tools, then there is an inspector tab. So there is a view site as well. There TryHackMe is providing us with different methods to get access to the developer tools. So in the Firefox, if you just go to more tools and web developer tools, then you would get access to the developer tools. And in the Chrome, you could go in on the three dots over here, more tools and developer tools. You would get access on Safari settings. Safari settings in the top menu, you will now have the desktop menu, and on the edge, there probably on the free dots as well, and on internet on settings, Internet Explorer. Now coming back to our Kali machine. So this was that developer tools we were talking about. And you might notice that there's an inspector tab. The page source doesn't always represent what's shown on the web page. This is because CSS, JavaScript, and user interaction can change the content and style of the web page. So when we view the page source of this website, it is quite possible that everything is not being covered up on that page source. Was based on the user interactions, if there is a login page, as we know there was on the customer, so if we log in, then page source might be different for an admin level user with administrative access, and it might be some other for some low level user, but it all can be seen with the inspector tab, and the page source often changes up based on the user interaction as well. So element inspector is a keynote over here. Element inspector, what basically does is helps us to inspect that particular element. Let's see, I clicked on that inspect and it just made it onto here, and we could see the HTML over here, and there's a div called class panel heading that is being used up. And this is the live preview. We can also edit and interact the page elements. So if we go on the new section and we click on this third 1. So it basically says the article is only for our. Yeah, so back and we were discussing what could be in the inspector tab, and there was an exercise on the TryHackMe, and it specifically says to bypass this premium pop-up that is being covered up on some kind of flag, and it says sorry, the article is for our premium customers. So if we inspect the source code behind this, we would come across this element source code, and it basically says display block. So display block was just is to block up some content on a page. So if we change the property of display from block to none, then display none what basically does is to bypass that entire pop-up, and this was basically the blocker that was causing all the pop-up opening up and blocking our access to the premium content. And if we just displayed it and set the property to none, the display property to none, then we got the access to our content that was that behind that pop-up. And let me enter the fact manually, not so hidden. And yeah, now there is an interesting thing as well. There is a debugger. What is a debugger? It is intended for debugging JavaScript, and again is an excellent feature for web developers wanting to work out why something might not be working. But as penetration testers, it gives us the option of digging deep into the JavaScript code. In Firefox and Safari, this feature is called debugger, but in Chrome, it's called sources. So coming back to our that demo website that was given to us, and there is a contact page on this website, and what this contact page does is help us to contact the that IT support on this company. And if we take a look at the inspect and we go to debugger, then we would see the JavaScripts that are being debugged, and there is a JavaScript flash main.js. So we are going to we are using a debugger, and debugging a red dot wouldn't be something you had do in a real world as a penetration tester, or because this dash main.js is printing up a red dot, and we want that as a developer or even a penetration tester. But debugging a red dot wouldn't be something that might be interesting, but often as penetration testers you might be able to find something sensitive on that JavaScript. So yeah, we did notice that this contact us page contained a red pop-up that is being hidden due to JavaScript. And if we click on the inspect element and debugger, so there is a one line comment that is often a one-liner JavaScript in order to prevent other developers from interfering with this, but we could pretty print this output. And now if we could also manually review the JavaScript over here by copying the source URL and What this might also be complicated, but if you notice there is this function that might be interesting to us, and the one of the most essential functions that debugger offers to to break points on the particular code. And now if we might notice up here as well that this function, that this flash one function, and if we could just click on the line number and click to remove the breakpoint, and we could add a breakpoint over here. And if we got the flag now, yeah, so now the last section, developer tools. The network tab under developer tools can be used to keep a track of every request a web page is being requesting up. So everything that a web page is requesting, different requests the browser is making to the server to access that particular contents on the web page. We can inspect what is our browser requesting up to the server on the network tab. And here we can see there's a contact form, the lab we got at the end. Let's pull out this, and I don't know at the rate, and a man was up. And let's try looking at the network tab about this. And yeah, so that's we got our last flag. And with that, our room should be completed up. Hope you enjoyed that as well as I really loved this. Keep learning, keep exploring, and stay anonymous.